The stars had been kind to humanity for 300 years. Since the first colony ships left Earth in 2047, humans had spread across 17 star systems. They built cities on distant moons. They farmed planets that had never known life. They looked up at alien skies and called them home. By the year 2347, over 15 billion humans lived among the stars. Earth alone held 12 billion souls. Children grew up knowing that the universe was vast and full of wonder. They learned about the alien species they shared the galaxy with. They believed that peace would last forever. They were wrong. The Veileth Hegemony had watched humanity for 2 centuries. This ancient alliance of 12 alien species controlled most of the known galaxy. They had ruled for 10,000 years. They had seen young species rise and fall like waves upon a shore. But humans were different. Humans worried them. In the great halls of the conclave, where the leaders of the 12 species gathered, there were heated debates about the human problem. The Sirathans, tall beings with silver skin and cold logic, presented their calculations. Human population was doubling every 60 years. Human technology was advancing faster than any species in recorded history. Humans asked questions that other species had learned to leave alone. "They are chaos," said High Minister Vorath, his 4 eyes narrowing with disgust. "They breed like insects. They spread like disease. In 500 years, they will outnumber us all." The Kralish ambassador, a creature of stone and fire, slammed his fist upon the table. "They are dangerous. They fight among themselves constantly, yet when threatened by others, they unite with terrifying speed. They do not know their place." One by one, the species voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be erased. They called it the cleansing. The hegemony spent 2 years preparing in secret. They engineered biological weapons designed specifically for human DNA. They built delivery systems that could poison entire planets. They positioned their fleets at the edges of human space, waiting for the signal. The signal came on a spring morning on Earth. The sky over every major city turned red as alien pods fell like rain. People looked up in confusion. Some thought it was beautiful. Then the pods opened and death spread across the world. The plague worked fast. Within hours, infected humans began to bleed from their eyes. Their skin turned gray. Their lungs filled with fluid. There was no cure. There was no treatment. There was only death, spreading from city to city, from continent to continent. Emergency broadcasts told people to stay inside. But the plague was already in the air, in the water, in everything. Hospitals overflowed within days. Doctors died alongside their patients. Parents held their children as the life faded from their small bodies. Earth fell silent in 3 weeks. The colonies received warning. Desperate messages from the dying planet told them what was coming. But there was nowhere to run. The hegemony fleet surrounded every human system. Their ships blocked all escape routes. And the plague pods fell on every world where humans lived. On Mars, 8 million people watched the red dust turn darker with ash from burning cities. On the moons of Jupiter, colonists sealed themselves in underground bunkers, only to find that the plague had already found its way inside. On distant Kepler 442b, humanity's furthest colony, people prayed to gods who did not answer. Some fought back. Human warships engaged the hegemony fleet in desperate battles. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Captain Elena Vance led her destroyer against a hegemony dreadnought, knowing she would die, hoping to buy time for evacuation ships that would never launch. Her ship burned like a small star against the darkness, and then it was gone. Her daughter, Sarah, was 14 years old when she watched her mother die on a view screen. She stood in an evacuation shuttle that managed to slip past the blockade. Around her, 40 other survivors sat in shocked silence. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another dot among the stars. The killing continued for 6 months. The hegemony was thorough. They hunted refugee ships through asteroid fields. They burned hidden settlements on forgotten moons. They scanned every rock and every station for human life signs. When they found survivors, they showed no mercy. In the end, the hegemony believed they had succeeded. Their reports claimed that human population had been reduced by 99.97%. Perhaps a few million remained, scattered and broken across the void. They were no longer a threat. They were barely worth mentioning. The conclave held a celebration. The 12 species toasted their victory with rare wines from 100 worlds. High Minister Vorath gave a speech about security and peace. The cleansing was officially declared complete. Humanity was added to the long list of extinct species, a footnote in galactic history. They moved on. They forgot this was their greatest mistake. In the dark spaces between stars, the survivors gathered. They were few and broken. They had lost everything, their homes, their families, their future. But they had not lost one thing that burned brighter than any star. They had not lost their rage. On a frozen asteroid at the edge of known space, a young woman named Zira Vance looked at the huddled refugees around her. She was 20 years old now. 6 years had passed since she watched her mother die. 6 years of running, hiding, and starving. 6 years of nightmares about red skies and gray skin. She made a promise that night. She spoke it quietly, but everyone heard. They tried to erase us, she said. They will learn that some things cannot be erased. They will learn that humanity does not die quietly. And they will learn that there are worse things in this universe than death. She paused, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. They will learn what it means to be hated by those with nothing left to lose. The survivors nodded. Something new was born in that moment. Something patient. Something terrible. Something that would make the galaxy tremble. Kael Vorath had always been different. Among his people, the Sirathans, difference was considered a disease. Sirathans valued logic, order, and obedience. They did not ask unnecessary questions. They did not feel unnecessary emotions. They served the hegemony with cold efficiency, and they were proud of their reputation as the most rational species in the galaxy. But Kael felt things he was not supposed to feel. He wondered about things he was not supposed to wonder about. And 20 years before the cleansing, he had committed the worst crime a Sirathan could commit. He had become curious about humans. It started as academic research. Kael was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. He was assigned to observe humans from a distance, to catalog their behavior and report any potential threats. But the more he watched, the more fascinated he became. Humans were everything Sirathans were not. They were emotional, chaotic, and unpredictable. They fought wars over ideas that could not be measured. They created art that served no practical purpose. They fell in love with people who were completely wrong for them, and they did it anyway, because love did not follow logic. Kael began to collect human artifacts in secret. He listened to their music's strange arrangements of sound that made him feel things he could not name. He read their poetry and their stories. He watched their children play games that had no winners. And slowly, something changed inside him. He began to care about them. When the cleansing was announced, Kael stood before the Sirathan Council and spoke against it. He argued that humans were not a threat but an opportunity. He said that their creativity and passion could benefit the entire galaxy. He begged his people to show mercy. The council listened in cold silence. Then they declared him defective. They stripped him of his position, his property, and his family name. His wife was ordered to forget him. His children were told their father had died. He was branded with the mark of exile, a black circle burned into his forehead, and cast out onto a dead moon at the edge of Sirathan space. You care for the condemned, the High Judge told him. Then you will share their fate. You will watch from your prison as they burn, and you will know that your weakness saved nothing. Kale lived alone on that frozen moon for 7 years. He survived on emergency rations left by supply drones. He had no contact with any living being. He watched through his small telescope as human worlds went dark, one by one. He heard the hegemony announcement celebrating the extinction of humanity, and he wept. He wept for a species he had never truly known. He wept for his own cowardice, for not doing more. He wept until he had no tears left, and then he simply waited to die. But death did not come. Instead, something else fell from the sky. The human ship crashed 3 kilometers from Kale's shelter. It hit the frozen ground at a shallow angle, carving a long scar across the gray dust. Fire and smoke rose into the thin atmosphere. Kale watched from his window, expecting hegemony patrol ships to arrive and finish off any survivors that no patrol ships came. This moon was too remote, too worthless for regular patrols. The crash had gone unnoticed for 3 days. Kale did nothing. He told himself it was not his problem. He told himself that helping humans would only bring more pain. He told himself that he was just one exiled alien on a dead moon, and there was nothing he could do. On the 4th day, he saw movement near the wreck. Someone was alive. Kale made his choice. He walked across the frozen plain, his breath forming clouds in the thin air. The closer he got to the wreck, the more destruction he saw. The ship had been military once, but it had been modified many times with stolen parts. It was ugly and desperate, like its occupants. Inside, he found 17 humans. Most were unconscious. Several were bleeding badly. They had been running from a hegemony patrol when their engine failed. They had drifted for weeks before crashing on this forgotten moon. A woman pointed a weapon at his face the moment he entered. She was thin and scarred, with dark hair cut short and eyes that burned with cold fire. Kale recognized the look in those eyes. It was the look of someone who had lost everything. "You are Valeth," she said. Her voice was steady despite her injuries. "You are one of them." Kale stood very still. He could see the bodies of those who had not survived the crash. He could see children among them. "I was Valeth," he said quietly. "I am nothing now, but I can help you." The woman laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Help us? Your people killed 15 billion of us. Your people burned my mother's ship while I watched. Why would you help us?" Kale thought about this question. He had asked himself the same thing for 7 years. "Because I should have helped before," he said. "Because I spoke against the cleansing, and they called me defective for it. Because I have spent 7 years alone on this rock, hating myself for doing nothing while your species died." He paused. "And because guilt is not enough. I need to do something or I will go mad." The woman studied him for a long moment. Her weapon did not move. "I am Sarah Vance," she said finally. "I lead what remains of the 7th Refugee Fleet. We have no fuel, no food, and no hope. If you are lying to me, I will kill you slowly. If you are telling the truth," she lowered her weapon slightly, "then tell me what you can offer." Kale felt something stir inside him. It was purpose. It had been dead for 7 years, and now it woke again. "I can offer you knowledge," he said. "I was a senior scientist before my exile. I know hegemony codes, patrol routes, and security weaknesses. I know which species hate each other, which alliances are fragile, and which secrets they want to keep buried." He met Syrah's burning gaze. "I can make you dangerous. I can make you something they never expected." Syrah stared at him. The other survivors watched in silence. "What do you want in return?" she asked. Kale looked at the dead children, at the broken ship. at the desperate survivors who represented everything that remained of a species he had failed to save. "I want redemption," he said, "and I want them to remember my name with fear. Not as Kale the exiled, as Kale the traitor who helped humanity rise from the ashes." Sira smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in years. "Then welcome to the war, traitor. We have work to do." The first year was about survival. Sira and her people repaired their crashed ship using parts from Kale's shelter. They ate the last of the emergency rations. They learned to recycle every drop of water, every breath of air. They lived in constant fear that a hegemony patrol would find them, but Kale had chosen their hiding place well. The dead moon was too far from trade routes, too small to appear on most maps. The hegemony had bigger concerns than searching every worthless rock in the galaxy. And so the survivors remained hidden, growing stronger day by day. Kale kept his promise. Every night, he taught them about the hegemony. He drew maps of patrol routes on the metal walls. He explained the weaknesses of each species, the Krellish fear of water, the Sirathan dependence on hierarchy, the Varath pride that made them predictable. He taught them codes that could unlock hegemony doors, frequencies that could intercept their communications, and lies that could fool their security systems. Sira absorbed everything. She had always been smart, but now her mind became a weapon. She memorized every detail Kale taught her. She asked questions that surprised even him. And she began to plan. "We cannot fight them directly," she told the survivors one night. "We are too few, and they are too many. But we do not need to defeat them. We only need to make them afraid." She explained her strategy. The hegemony was not one enemy but 12. The alliance was held together by mutual benefit, not by trust. If they could strike at the right targets, if they could create chaos and suspicion, the species would start blaming each other. The cracks would spread. The alliance would weaken. "We will be ghosts," Sira said. "We will strike and disappear. We will leave no evidence except our message. And slowly, we will teach them that exterminating humanity was the worst mistake they ever made." The survivors voted. The decision was unanimous. They called their agreement the Ember Pact, a promise that the fire of humanity was not dead, only hidden, waiting to burn again. But 17 people could not fight a galactic empire. They needed more. Kale revealed a secret he had kept for months. Before his exile, he had accessed classified hegemony databases. He had found reports of human survivors, small groups hiding in asteroid belts, ghost ships drifting in deep space, settlements on moons the hegemony had never bothered to scan. "The cleansing killed most of your species," he said. "But not all. Perhaps 2 million humans still live, scattered across the galaxy. The hegemony believes they are too broken to matter. They are wrong." Sira made a decision that night. She would find the other survivors. She would unite them. She would build an army from the ashes of her people. It took 3 years. Sira traveled in disguise aboard stolen ships. She visited dying colonies and hidden shelters. She found humans living like animals in the dark spaces of the galaxy, surviving on scraps and hope. Some did not trust her. Some had given up. Some had gone mad from loneliness and loss. But Sira had something they had forgotten: purpose. She looked into their eyes and reminded them that they were human, that their ancestors had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, that giving up was not in their blood. One by one, they joined her. Soldiers who had lost their units. Engineers who had built ships with their bare hands. Scientists who still remembered how to create weapons. Children who had grown up knowing nothing but fear and wanted to learn something else. By the 4th year, Sira commanded a fleet of 47 ships. They were small and ugly, held together by stolen parts and desperate repairs. But they were crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. Kale trained them all. He taught them to think like the enemy, to predict their movements, to exploit their weaknesses. He was patient and thorough. Sometimes the humans hated him. He was still alien, still Valeth, still one of the species that had murdered their families. But they needed him, and he never stopped working to earn their trust. The first raid happened on the 5th anniversary of the cleansing. Sira chose the target carefully, a small hegemony supply station at the edge of Krullish space. It held weapons, fuel, and food. More importantly, it was poorly defended. The hegemony did not expect attacks. They believed humans were extinct. 20 human ships dropped out of hyperspace without warning. They hit the station before the defenders could react. The attack lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the station was a burning ruin, and the humans had vanished with everything they needed, but they left something behind. Carved into the station's hull, in letters 10 meters tall, were 2 words in the human language: "We remember." The hegemony dismissed it as piracy. They increased patrols in the area, but found nothing. The humans were already gone, hiding in a different corner of the galaxy. 3 months later, another station burned. Then another. Each time, the same message: "We remember." Sira gathered her commanders after the 5th successful raid. They were in a hidden base inside an asteroid, surrounded by the growing resources of their stolen supplies. "They still think we are thieves," she said. "They still do not understand. It is time to teach them." The next target was not a supply station. It was a hegemony official, one of the Sirathan bureaucrats who had signed the cleansing order. He lived on a pleasure world, surrounded by guards and luxury. He believed he was untouchable. Sira proved him wrong. The assassination was clean and quiet. The official died in his sleep. But on the wall of his chamber, written in his own blood, was the message that would haunt the hegemony for decades: "We remember. We are coming." News spread through the hegemony like wildfire. Suddenly, humans were not extinct. They were hunting. They were angry, and no one knew where they would strike next. Kale watched Sarah address her growing army after the assassination. She stood tall and calm, her scars visible in the harsh light. "This is not terrorism," she told them. "This is justice. They killed 15 billion of us." They laughed and celebrated while our children choked on their poison. They thought we would disappear into history, like all the other species they have destroyed. Her voice hardened. "We will not disappear. We will become their nightmare. We will become the thing they see when they close their eyes. And one day, when they beg for mercy, we will show them exactly how much mercy they showed us." The soldiers cheered. The sound echoed through the asteroid base, louder than any weapon. Kale felt a chill run down his spine. He had wanted redemption. He had wanted to help humanity survive. But watching Sira in that moment, he realized something that both terrified and thrilled him. He had not just helped humanity survive. He had helped them become something that the galaxy had never seen before. He had helped them become vengeance itself. 10 years passed. The galaxy changed. The hegemony still controlled the same territory. They still held the same power. But something was different now. Something was wrong. Everyone could feel it, even if they refused to say it aloud. Humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without pattern or warning. A supply convoy would vanish in one sector, while an admiral died in his bed on the other side of the galaxy. Military bases burned. Politicians disappeared. Ships went silent and were found drifting, their crews dead, their hulls marked with the same 2 words: "We remember." The hegemony tried everything. They increased patrols. They built better defenses. They offered rewards for information about human bases. Nothing worked. The attacks continued. The fear grew. Sira called it the doctrine of Ash. The humans would not build. They would not claim territory. They would not negotiate or make demands. They would simply burn. They would turn everything the hegemony valued into ash and memory. They would make the cost of the cleansing so high that future generations would curse the ancestors who ordered it. Her army had grown beyond anything she had imagined. Nearly 500,000 humans now served the cause. They operated in small cells scattered across the galaxy. They communicated through codes that Kale had designed, signals hidden in the background radiation of dying stars. The hegemony could not track them because they were not an army in the traditional sense. They were a disease that had learned to think. Kale had aged in those 10 years. His silver skin had faded to gray. His hands shook when he worked now. But his mind was still sharp, and his knowledge was still valuable. He spent his days training new operatives, teaching them everything he knew about the enemy. He also watched Sarah change. The young woman he had pulled from a crashed ship was gone. In her place was something harder, colder, more certain. She rarely slept. She never laughed. She made decisions that cost lives, and she never hesitated. "Do you regret it?" Kale asked her one night, when they were alone in her command room. Maps of hegemony space covered the walls. Each red mark represented an attack. There were hundreds of them now. Regret what? Sarah asked without looking up from her planning. Any of it. The things we have done. The people we have killed. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but certain. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that they forced us to become this. But I do not regret my choices." She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "They murdered children, Kale. They poisoned babies in their cribs. They watched families choke on their blood and called it cleansing, as if we were dirt to be washed away." Her jaw tightened. "I will not apologize for making them pay. I will not apologize for teaching the galaxy that humanity is not prey." Kale nodded slowly. He understood. He had helped create this, after all. He could not condemn it now. The hegemony was fracturing, just as Sarah had predicted. The 12 species had begun to blame each other for the security failures. The Krellish accused the Sirathans of providing weak intelligence. The Sirathans accused the Varath of incompetent military leadership. The smaller species whispered that the cleansing had been a mistake, that they should have left the humans alone. A hegemony council meeting nearly ended in violence when a Krellish admiral accused a Sirathan general of secretly helping the human resistance. The accusation was false, but it showed how deep the paranoia had grown. The alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was showing cracks that might never heal. Some hegemony officials tried to negotiate. They sent messages into the void, offering peace, offering recognition, offering to let humanity have their own territory if they would just stop fighting. Sarah never responded. There was nothing to negotiate. The hegemony wanted peace so they could feel safe again. Humanity wanted justice that could never be achieved through talks or treaties. One by one, the architects of the cleansing died. Ministers who had voted for extinction were found dead in their homes. Scientists who had designed the plague were killed in their laboratories. Ship captains who had bombed human colonies vanished without a trace. Sarah kept a list. It held over 3,000 names, every official, every soldier, every bureaucrat who had participated in the genocide. She checked names off the list as they died. She would not stop until every name was crossed out. Kale watched the list grow shorter and felt a strange mixture of pride and horror. This was what he had helped build. This was his redemption and his damnation, wrapped together in blood and fire. In the 15th year of the war, humanity unveiled something new. A young engineer named Jonas Reed had developed a weapon that could disable hegemony shields. It used principles that alien scientists had dismissed as impossible. But humans had never cared much about what was supposed to be impossible. The first test was devastating. A hegemony battleship, one of the largest in their fleet, found itself suddenly defenseless against a handful of human fighters. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The battleship burned. More importantly, the hegemony could not understand how it had happened. Their scientists studied the wreckage for months and found no answers. The technology was too different, too human. It worked on principles that made no sense to their ordered minds. Sarah smiled when she heard the news. It was a cold smile, but it was real. They thought they were exterminating insects, she said. They never understood what we really are. We are the species that split the atom because we wondered what would happen. We are the species that flew to our moon using computers weaker than a child's toy. We are the species that never stops asking what if. She stood and looked out at the stars. They tried to erase that. They failed. And now they will learn what happens when you wake a sleeping giant. The final phase was approaching. Sarah had been planning it for years, waiting until they were strong enough. Until the hegemony was weak enough. Operation Ashfall, the attack that would break the hegemony forever. Kale looked at the plans spread before him. They were bold, almost insane. They required perfect timing, perfect coordination, and more luck than any commander had a right to expect. It is a good plan, he said quietly. Sarah nodded. It is the only plan that matters. Everything we have done for 20 years has been building to this moment. She met his eyes. Will you stand with me at the end, old friend? Kale thought about his exile, his years of guilt, the dead children he still saw in his dreams. He thought about the species he had betrayed, the people he had helped destroy. He thought about redemption and whether it was even possible for someone like him. Until my last breath, he said. Sarah smiled. For just a moment, she looked like the young woman he had rescued from a crashed ship all those years ago. Then the moment passed and the commander returned. Then let us end this, she said. Let us show them what vengeance looks like. The conclave throne hung in space like a jewel of arrogance. It was the largest station ever built, a massive ring of gold and crystal that orbited a dying star. For 10,000 years, the leaders of the 12 species had gathered here to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. Here, treaties were signed. Here, wars were declared. Here, the order for humanity's extinction had been given. Today, every surviving architect of the cleansing had gathered to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the hegemony's founding. 10,000 delegates filled the Great Hall. They drank rare wines and congratulated themselves on the peace they had achieved. They had almost forgotten about the human problem. Almost. Sarah watched the celebration through a stolen security feed. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, a battered cruiser that had once belonged to the Krellish Navy. Around her, a fleet of 300 human ships waited in the darkness between stars. All units report ready, her communications officer announced. We are in position. Sarah nodded slowly. 20 years of planning. 20 years of sacrifice and death. It all came down to this moment. She opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was calm and steady, like a surgeon preparing for an operation. Today, we end it. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity does not forgive, does not forget, does not stop. She paused. Many of us will not survive this day, but those who die will die free. They will die knowing that they paid back a debt written in the blood of 15 billion innocents. And those who live will carry our memory to the stars. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her mother burning in space, of children choking on poison, of all the ghosts that had followed her through the years. For Earth, she said softly. For everyone we lost, attack. 300 ships jumped into normal space around the conclave throne. They appeared like angry stars, weapons already firing. The hegemony defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were unprepared. They had grown comfortable in their power. They had forgotten what desperation looked like. Human ships dove into the battle without hesitation. They did not retreat. They did not calculate acceptable losses. They fought like people who had already died once and had nothing left to fear. When their weapons ran dry, they rammed enemy ships. When their engines failed, they detonated their reactors. Every human who died took hegemony soldiers with them. Jonas Reed's shield-breaking technology turned the battle into a massacre. Hegemony battleships found themselves suddenly vulnerable. Their captains screamed for help that would not come. Their crews died in confusion and terror, unable to understand how they were losing to an enemy they had supposedly destroyed. Sierra led the assault on the station itself. Her ship punched through the docking bay doors, crashing into the golden holes of the conclave. She led her soldiers through corridors filled with panicking delegates, past monuments to hegemony glory, past statues of leaders who had signed extinction orders. Kale walked beside her. He was old now, his body failing, but his eyes were clear. He had waited 20 years for this moment. He would not miss it. They reached the great hall where the celebration had been held. The delegates cowered against the wall Sirathans in Krelish and Varath, and all the other species who had voted for humanity's death. They looked at the human soldiers with wide eyes, finally understanding what they had created. High Minister Varath stepped forward. He was ancient now, his 4 eyes dim with age, but his pride remained. "You cannot do this," he said. "You are animals. You are extinct. You cannot." Sarah shot him before he could finish. The sound echoed through the hall like thunder. "I am Commander Sarah Vance," she said to the room. Her voice carried to every corner. "My mother died fighting your ships. My father was killed by your plague. My world was burned by your order." She walked slowly through the crowd of terrified delegates. "For 20 years I have hunted you. For 20 years I have made you afraid. And now at last I will make you understand." Kale stepped forward. His presence caused a stir among the Sirathan delegates. They recognized him, the traitor, the exile, the defective one who had sided with the condemned. "You called them a contamination," Kale said quietly. His voice was tired but steady. "You were right. They infected me with something your species never understood. They infected me with the courage to be hated for doing what is right. They infected me with the belief that some things are worth more than safety and order." He looked at his former people with something that might have been pity. You could have welcomed them. You could have learned from them. Instead, you tried to erase them, and in doing so, you taught them that kindness was a luxury they could no longer afford. Syrah activated a broadcast system that Kale had rigged. Her image appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Every species, every world, every ship heard her next words. "I speak to the hegemony and to all who watch. You tried to erase humanity. You burned our world. You killed our children. You thought you could murder a species and sleep peacefully afterward." Her eyes were hard as diamonds. "You were wrong." She gestured at the cowering delegates. "These are your leaders. These are the ones who ordered our extinction. Watch what happens to those who try to destroy us. Remember it. Teach your children. Write it in your histories." She paused, letting her words sink in across 1,000 worlds. "We are humanity. We do not break. We do not bend. We do not forgive those who slaughter our innocent. And we will never, never stop. Not until every species that signed the Cleansing Accord learns the price of trying to murder a dream." The broadcast ended. Syrah turned to her soldiers. "Set the charges. Bring down the station." The soldiers moved to obey. Explosions began to shake the great hall. The golden ceiling cracked and groaned. Delegates screamed and ran for escape pods that would not save them. Kale stumbled. His body was finally giving out. 20 years of exile, 20 years of war. It had taken everything from him. Sira caught him before he fell. "We need to go," she said. "The station is collapsing." Kale shook his head. He looked up at her with eyes that held no regret. "My place is here. I was supposed to die on that moon, alone and forgotten. Instead, I helped you become this." He smiled weakly. "This is a better ending. Let me stay." Sira wanted to argue, but she understood. Some debts could only be paid in full. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." "Per aspera ad astra," Kale replied. His voice was barely audible now. "Through hardship to the stars. Your ancestors said that. I always loved it." His eyes closed. "Go now. Finish the work. Remember me." Sira laid him down gently as the station shook around them. She pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heart slow and stop. Then she ran. She reached her ship as the conclave throne began to break apart. The golden ring cracked and burned, falling into the dying star below. The delegates, the monuments, the 10,000 years of hegemony arrogance, all of it became ash and fire. Sira watched from her bridge as the station died. Her fleet had taken heavy losses, but enough ships remained. Enough humans had survived to continue the work. The galaxy watched too. Every species saw the conclave burn. Every species understood the message. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was something new, something born from genocide and hardship, something that would never forget and never forgive. In the years that followed, the hegemony collapsed. The alliance shattered as species turned on each other, blaming each other for the disaster they had created. Some sued for peace with humanity. Some fled to distant stars. Some simply surrendered and waited for judgment. Humanity did not return to Earth. Not yet. The homeworld was still poisoned, still healing. But they claimed new worlds, built new cities, and created a new civilization from the ashes of the old. And they remembered. They built monuments to the 15 billion who had died. They taught their children about the cleansing and the long war that followed. They honored the name of Kale Vareth, the alien who had chosen justice over safety. Sira lived to see it all. She grew old and tired, her scars fading but her memories remaining sharp. On her last day, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had never known fear, she looked up at the stars and smiled. "We survived," she whispered. "We endured. And we showed them what happens when you try to erase a dream." She closed her eyes, and the last soldier of the Ember Pact found her peace at last. But humanity continued. Always forward. Always remembering. Through hardship, to the stars. Forever.